I am standing at the edge of land, looking out onto water.
I am falling upwards, spiraling through a maelstrom.
I'm floating above my bed, the air between my body below and my body above, pulsing as I look down upon myself.
I'm stepping on fish sticks, feeling them squelch under my feet, the breading working itself into my toenails.
I am breathing in a forest of lichen, breathing with it as it expands and contracts inside and around me, my lungs merging with the root network, firing signals from 20 miles away.
I am ones and zeros falling down a screen. I am code, an algorithm that drives the machine.
I am looking up at a winding staircase.
I am heaving chains.
I am a dog with the head of a dragon.
I'm a gaseous ring around a university.
I am terrifying.
I am terrified.
I am terrific.
Am I dreaming?
Am I awake?
Am I really here?
Is this a university?
Oh, hello. Good afternoon. This is your
Professor,
teacher,
assistant,
student,
mother,
mentor,
colleague,
colleague.
professor,
colleague.
I don't even care.
I don't care.
Teacher.
Welcome. This is my home.
My office.
My balcony. This is also my
Kitchen, balcony,
Kitchen,
bathroom,
my wife.
kitchen,
Space.
meditation space.
Bathroom.
Yeah. This is where I work from home and where work feels at home. Isn't it grand? It has truly been a blessed relief not to have to go outside for 12 months. It's just been so freeing, you know? All that time I used to spend in a car,
on the train, on the sidewalk,
walking on the
sidewalk,
jogging,
on the train.
my hands,
Or
all that time saved. Yeah, being quarantined is the best thing that has happened to my work. I can wake up and get right to it, you know, not a moment wasted, not a moment lost on the tediousness of getting the day going. All those snatches of time spent on getting dressed and
Getting up,
brushing my teeth,
putting my pants,
my hair,
underwear,
all of that.
all that time reclaimed to give to my work.
Reclaiming
my time, which now takes twice as long to do, you know, because the details of this brave new remote world are just so engrossing. And there's just so much more to do when you have so much more time to do so much more, you know? I don't know about the rest of you, but it has been quite easy for me to just, you know, let go of all of the unnecessary societal bullshit that we have to do at work, like talking to people, the chit chat, the hugs. Oh God, the hugs, the wind up and wind down from meetings, having to see students and professors face to face, all that extra energy spent on communicating. I've got it all back. I've produced so many more pages of emails,
PowerPoint. Hey, Marco, nails, camera on.
You need to turn on your everyone, just a minute. Can you nice glasses, Lore? It's fabulous. Oh, I'm not a cat.
I'm not a
I
cat.
am not.
I'm not a cat.
Is that better now?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know why we didn't do this do this before the pandemic. It's just so much more efficient. Come, let me give you a tour. Oh,
All right.
This is my room. This is where I work. This is my office. This is my kitchen. This is my fantastic fan right up there. It's turning crazy.
where I do
Here
all
is
of
where
my
I work.
work.
And I sit, and I eat, and I sleep, and I drink.
My little dog tour.
This is my
So
hallway.
I
This is
love
crazy.
Whatever.
Walk around. Everything. It's just like
We never know.
Where I take
crazy. Yeah.
shower.
I can work here. I can sleep here. I can drink it. I don't have to go anywhere. It's like all I'm like walking through some fascinating. And I just do everything and all
Ignore that. Anyway, you know, our offices are still.
Sit on the couch, be it's fantastic. Crazy. I love it.
Stuff.
And you know what I'm talking about, yeah? This is an office that everyone would be envious of and dream of.
Mm.
We have it.
Mm-hmm.
And look at what an employee-funded satellite campus could look like. It's cozy, it's efficient, it's cheap. It's really hard to imagine going back to the way things were, honestly. If this is the university of the future looks pretty grand.
Is this the neoliberal university's dream come true? Its operations outsourced to satellite campuses and apartment complexes and suburban backyards, tended by mothers and partners and siblings, where the critical shortage of resources, of space, time, funding, travel, is folded into the crisis of living itself. Virtual or not, the operational technology of the university has remained quite the same. It does what it has always done best in this country: settled on land, in spaces that it claims for itself. It continues to grind, and we are tasked to comply. Or is this remote, long-distance, unsettled relationship with the university a break from which to theorize and hack another university into life?
In the past year, living and working through a pandemic, I committed myself to cultivation of some kind, as we have all done. I didn't start baking bread or growing new plants or cooking meals I've never attempted. I sat down with the ghosts that have trailed me ever since I walked through the gates of my first university. They rested their chins on my shoulder and whispered that they wanted to come home to me. Because you see, like many of us who've been displaced from our homes and the littered fragments of past lives, I sought refuge in a place that tolerated, if not welcomed me. Because in the university, I found a patron, a sponsor, a foster home that held the promise of a life worth building. But a home that, like for many of us, felt profoundly alienating. I found and lost myself over and over in a fraught relationship with a force that had a ravenous appetite for my humanity. The 21st century university simultaneously cultivated difference and devoured it. It afforded me 15 years of visas in exchange for my demonstration of its good name. It asked for complicity in exchange for my freedom. The traces of a life that I had brought with me rattled around in the hallways, pulled into my seminars, and soaking the papers that I wrote with their wet breath. The universities settled into them. But I was ready to break them out when I could. Now, as a citizen, settler.
Ethnic studies scholar and community organizer K. Wayne Yang, under the nom de plume La Paperson, notes in his book, A Third University is Possible, that the enterprise of the university shares a technology with settler colonialism. The establishing of a university rewrites our memory of the land on which it sits, and it rewrites our own sense of place within the academy.
Because the modern day research university's defining originary trait has been the acquisition and trade of land, a settler colonial mechanism turning land into capital and capital into institutions. To imagine a different university simply as deterritorialized through virtual pedagogy is to resist decolonizing the university.
Through divestitures from the living history of land grants, which stole and sold land to the enterprise of educating settlers, is an ideological future. But LePaperson proposes a practical methodology for the present. He asks us to look to the technologies of the university, the algorithm of its operation, which, like any logic of power, is fundamentally autonomous, disloyal, and hackable.
Technology of the university requires code to function. We are the decolonial code. And not only how and what we teach and study, but how we hijack institutional technology to divert its power back to those whose ghosts fill the hall. That decolonization is a doing from within, and as Stefano Harney and Fred Moten describe, a way to settle a debt through fugitivity, to refuse to call ourselves to order, to not fall into order with the choices that are offered to us. And so.
Write more as collectives rather than individuals.
Share books for students using research funds.
Undertake zero budget research, but not zero budget impact.
Use institutional funds to support friendship.
Steal paper from the university. Timber bills built many of our campuses after all.
Share textbooks. Scan more pages than you should.
Research should be free, and presses should be supported by institutions and not the free market.
Invite students to bring their children to class.
Distribute monies from research grants and give all the monies to participants who are in precarious situations under capitalism and are from historically marginalized communities.
Give food remaining from campus events to the housing insecure in your neighborhood.
Use the skills that you learn inside institutional walls, outside in the community.
Offer editing papers and public speaking services to help the people around you gain access to material resources, like applying for jobs.
Become an intellectual worker with the consciousness-raising efforts of activist organizations.
Remember to breathe.
I remember some things. The smell of the conference room, the way the pavement felt when I walked to class in my noisy shoes, the buzz of bodies moving through the corridors, the loaded stillness of the building when classes are in session. They're phantasms now, materializing in the 12 months since we fled the land-bound university, gliding between the physical space I used to inhabit and the refurbished memory of them that rattle around in my home now. Memory is a funny thing. It's not as we imagine it to be. The past coming back to remind us, but the present revealing itself to us disguised as history.
Do you remember what LaPauperson said about that the critically oriented university is nostalgic for itself? For a time when criticism was righteous, true, and morally guided. As if we have lost our way once we begin advocating for an active dismantling of a bogus meritocracy and white noblesse oblige. Civility, respectability, decorum, norms of engagement spelled out in our syllabi and mission statements, decorating our CVs, written onto our flesh.
It is difficult for me to recall things as they were. Memory is already a tricky beast, but for some, its demand that we reconstruct our pasts with accuracy feels like even more of a trick of the colonial institutional archive. I am tired. What energetic labor is required for recalling and reshaping lived and inherited memory?
Julietta Singh writes, quote, "The colonial errand is an act of entering the wilderness in order to convert, to destroy, to civilize. It does so through the force and play of some bodies against others, through the enforced delivery of messages that articulate and require the destruction of all that is wild in the wilderness. Against this history of interpreting and acting out the colonial errand, I desire a counterintuitive reclaiming of the errand as an inventive public project of wild erranding, of collectively performing missives for the wild, the unruly, the anti-politics of dissent, in the abiding effort to live toward an ungovernable future present," end quote.
They say that the Filipinx object is the perpetually invisible, erased, forgotten, and unrecognizable subject or object. Many thanks, no thanks to the empire. And when they do appear, how dare they take over, trouble, exceed the benevolent institution, the benevolent United States of America. Benevolent? Where is benevolence in how 1/3 of nurses who died from COVID are Filipino Americans when they're just 4% of nurses in the United States? In academia, the refrains restrain like, no, don't act like that. No, we already have a lot of Asians. Are you Asian? No, your topic's too specific and not generalizable. To the white majority, sorry. No, no one studies that. No. Pero, we will study this. We refuse to be an object anymore. We are Southeast Asian. At we will act this way despite feeling your icky, pinning gaze on us. Pero ikaw, are you actually sure of what you're looking at?
Staying with the university has meant taming an immigrant wildness through a series of high-stakes bureaucratic errands, which, as Singh describes, are summons to quotidian annoyance, a disruption from those other things one desires to be doing. A series of errands that transforms the wilderness of the uncivilized mind into fecund land. A colonial errand framed as diminutive and so mundane that the subliminal messages it carries that we are not made to relay are distributed across the to-do list. And we are distracted from what we're actually doing and saying and making. Errands like endless paperwork, visa applications, trips to consulates, compulsive box checking, rule checking, staying within the lines, expressions of gratitude for being included, alienation from my own desires, errands that flatten the individuality so paradoxically prized in the global north, anxieties of location and dislocation, employment and deportation that are inherently tied to an ability to settle. We become settlers explicitly through our erranding for the university. And now, the fissure that the pandemic has created offers us once again an inoculation against the dregs of institutional complicity. which has not always been available to the unsettled. If we hear what Singh is telling us, we agree to make another kind of appointment, to break from the grind and take a vaccine, agree to run a decolonial errand that stops an infection in its tracks.
A student at Concordia says he was shocked to discover that the teacher of an online course he was taking had died nearly 2 years ago. He found out when he tried to contact the man to ask a question. Matt Grillo has more.
My name is François-Marc Gagnon.
An expert in Canadian art history, Concordia University asked Dr. François-Marc Gagnon to develop an online class years ago. Aaron N. Sweeney is a student in that class this semester, and he wanted to ask Gagnon a question, so he looked him up, and it left him in disbelief.
When I was looking up his name to get his email address, I pulled up his obituary.
It turns out Gagnon died nearly 2 years ago, but his lectures continue to be used, and Sweeney says at no point was this made clear to him.
There were 2 professors listed, but there was no indication that one of them was not available or that, one of them had passed. There was really no indication whatsoever.
Who are we when we work beyond death? Our labor automated and sold to our own people.
I think of those who left their bodies while teaching through devastating illness. The labor of their lives taking on a grim veil when we realize that life of the mind can and will be cruelly snapped away from the life of the body.
In what university do we imagine pulsing life rather than sarcophagi, when our bones become the land and land becomes an archive of the dead?
Who are we now? Tenders of graves, filling up mausoleums with our documents? Architects of expansion?
Does the university we imagine look like bright green moss growing on immovable slabs of rock? Living organism or resurrected crypt, fluid across borders or locked into tear-drenched land?
It feels like everyone is moving but me, even though I have relocated from country to country, town to town, apartment to apartment, office to office, bedroom to kitchen, turning myself inside and out. It feels like I've been running in place. I'm watching the scenes of other people's lives flash by at great speeds, and I am not settled, only still.
The Fourth World University exists within previous iterations as a decolonizing technology, rather than a fully realized and decolonized university.
Why do we presume that freedom's doppelganger is critical consciousness? When thinking is no longer enough, when the neoliberal university demands identitarian production, what is identitarian action?
These are things that are hard to name, a kind of fugitive action that is separate from being settled. What is a university that rejects the mythology that change is always in the future or something that has already happened in the past? The fugitivity of the Fourth World University is a perpetual being in motion, despite the narcotic monolith of organizational culture.
This is a kind of quiet fugitivity that is joyful and steadfast in its transformation of the old mansion. There are no gatekeepers at the door and no servants sweeping up the debris of our intellectual labor.
Here, we are not masters, but builders. We are makers and caretakers, and we hold between us more visible and lit up than ever the pacts we make outside the academy, the burrow into the nooks between the hinges, spraying dust into the gears of the machine, locking the wheels so we may alter its course with our rhizomatic yet tightly bound lineages.
To activate a fourth world university that operates in the radical optimism of the present tense, always and already. What are the errands that we choose?
To be raised by Soini.
To be held by Satoshi.
To laugh with Jennifer.
To be seen by Bernadette.
To fly with Lily.
To chill with Nina.
To learn from Lisa.
To laugh with Gloria.
To plan with Audrey.
Hugged by Phoebe.
To be quiet with Amy.
To be trusted by Shinsuke.
To be cherished by Megan.
To be edited by Devika.
To play an RPG with Mira.
To be comforted by Catherine.
To walk with Nishita.
To cry with Susan.
To laugh with Mary.
To create with Lore.
To be taught by Brandon.
To sigh with Shadi.
To organize with Oscar.
To read with Mohan.
To rise with Amy.
To imagine with Jose.
To be heard by Joan.
To teach with Sheena.
To hold the hand of Miranda.
To dance with Doc.
To make music with Michael.
To march with Jade.
To trouble with Michael.
To confide in Tyler.
To dream with Karen.
To plot with Nikki.
To eat with Maribel.
To create with Fernando.
To rally with Zirad.
To stand with Kent.
To be read by Fred.
To be read by Tom.
To be led by Gust.
To write with Jinnah.
To travel with Dacheng.
To contemplate with Liana.
To leave no hacker behind.
To live.
To breathe.
To ride.
To die.